Next session, focusing more on data transformation. We're going to look at some of the transformation highlights that we've seen this year, along with a few things that you can do to, well, I guess, transform yourself while on lockdown. And we're also going to have a little peek into the future from a roadmap perspective. So we'll cover a little bit of that right now for you. We wanted to use this session to highlight a couple of recent innovations that we think matter. The first will focus on a specific transformer update. For those of you that are a little less experienced though, a transformer is a tool that you use to manipulate your data, and you can find a list of them at the end of this link, so that's safe.com/transformers. I'm gonna just dive over to it, he says, racing through the slides. There we go, if I click in the right place, we'll get that URL up. Safe.com/transformers. It gives you a transformer list. Most importantly, though, it's by most used. So you can see that, you know, if you're one of the newer people to FME, we've had a few questions from some new or early starting FME users out there on the chat already. If you're brand new, come to this link, have a look at the top of the list. Learn, review the top 20 or so transformers, because basically if everybody else is using them, then you're probably going to need to. I also quite like, for the more experienced of you out there, quite like scrolling to the bottom, because down at the bottom of the list there'll be two things. There'll be things that are brand new that are making their way up the ranks, like the proj transformers that are in here for reprojection that are new in 2020, but there's also ones in here that clearly people are not using. Now you can find some gems down here, but you can also find some things that perhaps more things like you know, maybe they were going to be bigger than they are, but you know, something's got to be at the bottom of the list. So there you go. Anyway, so I'm going to focus on the statistics calculator. I'm going to give a little bit of airtime to it because it's had a complete facelift, or if we want to take this detox analogy to the extreme, it's had an enema. It's now faster and lighter than ever before. Of the nearly 500 standard transformers in FME, it's the 19th most used. Count them, 19 ahead of it. And as a result, Safe have completely rewritten it. Basically, it's been given a new interface. You've now got a lot more control than you had before. In some scenarios, it's 1,000 times faster, but in the majority, it's 100 times faster. And as that's a more realistic of the two numbers, I think I'll leave it there. It also supports something called bulk mode. Now I'm throwing that in for the experienced ones of you out there. Go and look up bulk mode on the Knowledge Center. There's a link there. I'm sure someone will throw it into the chat window for you to have a look at. But there's a Knowledge Center article around bulk mode that's worth a read. That means that, you know, if you want to make some of your processes go faster, then you can do it using that bulk mode. The one thing to say then around transformers is some of you may be aware that transformers have versions. Effectively, the ethos is that if you build a workspace today in FME 2020, in FME 2025, if you open today's workspace in that new version, well, it should just work. Now, there's a few challenges with that statement because, you know, I've already mentioned that APIs have a finite life, so that can be a little bit of a challenge. There's also programming languages that throw in issues, but on the whole, the point is that forward compatibility is there. Because when you add a transformer today, you'll get today's version. It means that if you open up a workspace from 5 years ago in FME 2020, you're probably going to see down the left-hand side of your, down your navigation window, in your navigation window, wherever you position that on screen, that there'll be some upgradable transformers. If you right-click on a transformer that can be upgraded, you can see here that this is version 8. This is the interface you get. The before is on the left, the after is on the right, and you can see here that the interface has taken a real change. Actually, the vastly improved interface means that you don't have to calculate things you don't need and then have to go to the trouble of throwing them away. So that's one performance step change right there, because here you can see that if I've got an attribute called park area and I want to generate the average park area, that's fine. But if I also want to calculate the sum of the tree count, I'm also going to get the average tree count, and I'm going to get a sum of park area, which are attributes I generate and then have to throw away. Whereas in the new interface, I've got so much more control. I can just say I only want the mean of park area and the sum of the tree count. And you'll notice that if I step back one slide, you can see there's no cumulative port on here anymore. And that's because it's now a parameter that you can turn on, because I mean, I sometimes refer to it as the accountant's friend, because you can create this rolling total. Yeah, so it's not there. People didn't use it very much, so why have it front and center? You can turn it on and it'll appear. So I'm going to go on throw open a workspace just to give you a bit of a flavor of this. It's pre-canned. It's a Blue Peter special. So here's one I made earlier. You can see here that those of you who've been on FME introductory training, this will be very familiar to you, because this is the parks data set that we're doing a little bit of processing with. If I go and view the source data, you can see there's a visualization tool down at the bottom here, the visual preview. I've got some park polygons. First of all, to highlight in here is that I have got 1, 2, 3 transformers, all of which are fairly heavily used transformers, testing and filtering, calculating physical area, and also doing some stats calculation. They've all been given bulk mode. This is what I was alluding to earlier on, the upgradable transformers. If I right click and show the changes on the area calculator, you should be able to see that there is a version addition here, and it's been added bulk mode support. And that is the case for all 3 of those. When it comes to upgrading, though, just be a little bit gentle with upgrading workspaces. You should do it if you need to, if there's going to be a specific thing that you're going to get as a benefit. You don't have to upgrade everything in a workspace when you get a new version of FME. So we generally advocate going softly. You can see if I hover my cursor over this transformer, it's a version 8, and it says at the bottom that there is a latest version 9 at the bottom of that tooltip. This transformer here is the latest one, that is version 9. When you go and add transformer using the quick add, you'll get a statistics calculator pop up. That'll be the new one. You can add it in. What we then suggest you do is you disable the existing transformer and effectively bypass it. So you run it first, benchmark it, get some output from it, and then go and connect in the new one and run it again and see if you get the same result. Once you're happy, then you can delete the old process. And you can also use that effort to benchmark the performance as well and see what sort of step change you get in performance in that workflow. So the other thing I want to draw your attention to is the new style connection lines. Now, this has received quite a bit of press, so I'm going to focus on a bit of a hidden feature in a moment. But here you can see you can make lines different colors and styles. Now I can hear half of you listening to this thinking, yeah, right, that's great, and the other half dropped off your chair because you've wanted this for ages. You may be one of the many people that voted on this idea, one of the most heavily voted for ideas on the Knowledge Centre, which you can see has been now released. So when you create an idea, you can go on, upvote it and put comments on things, and then you'll get to see when it gets released. It is good from a visual identification point of view. Frankly, for me, it's really handy when you zoom full extents of a workspace to go and see parts of a workspace that you're trying to draw someone's attention to, either yours or someone you're passing the process to. It's also pretty good for dealing with cross streams. So I'm not an advocate for trying to have connecting lines draping over the top of each other, because it makes workspaces really difficult to support and can be a bit challenging. But in some cases, you just can't avoid it. You could have done in this case, but it's just a bit of a screen grab. So if you want to avoid cross streams, you can change the colors so that you can see which link is going where. So it's a handy little tip. This is a larger workspace. Now, I'm showing this because I just want to demonstrate this purpose that I was alluding to a moment ago. And it's nice to do that with a workspace that's got more than 10 transformers in it, frankly, because you get to see the benefit. So I'm going to go and grab that workspace now, drag it into the Workbench interface so you can see it. And I'm not going to run it because that's not the point of this workspace. The point of this workspace is to show you that this is a workspace that we have provided to a customer, and basically, we fully document it. That's what all those colorful balloons are and descriptions of what happens. We tend to highlight things in red where there's a dependency, so you can draw somebody's eye. The same is true now. You get the ability to change the properties of a link. If I go for a custom style, I'm going to go for red, just because I've talked about red. I'm going to go for a what do I want? I want an extra thick solid line, and you've got dots and dashes and all sorts of things in there. And you can see that it's changed the link there. But the interesting thing is when you go and apply this to all upstream connectors, and then all of a sudden what you can see is that the highlight gets applied to everything upstream of that location. Now, in this particular workspace, this is super handy for spotting where data is going to go to from that point. So if you're tracing features, trying to work out how a particular attribute or a particular feature has made it to a portion of your workspace, when it comes to debugging and trying to understand the data flow a bit more effectively, this can be really handy, because you can see that that portion of that workspace doesn't influence this bottom section of the workspace at all. So you can see very easily the implications of the way that you've rigged up your workflow. Anyway, just to change gears, transforming yourself. I mean, we're sort of in lockdown, maybe coming out of a little bit of lockdown at the moment, but I think there's still going to be some significant social distancing for some time to come, and there are options around personal development. I saw some interesting tweets this morning suggesting that gin is just a good solution, just as good a solution as trying to do personal development, but I'm not advocating either. You can go and make your own decisions. You can see here that I wanted to just show you a few interesting things that I've noticed in recent months. This is something that turned up around Twitter. This is a chap I know in New Zealand who has done some cool stuff with FME. This is just an example of because you can, not necessarily because you should. But this is a workspace, and you can see that he's got it hooked up to a little board. You can see if I scroll across, he's hooked it up to his Christmas lights, and they flash on and off. Because he's firing a relay every time a feature passes through an FME workspace. A bit of silliness. Little Bits, some of you might have heard of Little Bits. It's a rather expensive electronics kit that you can go and buy, and there's a link to it in here. I'm not sponsored by Little Bits, but I'm just mentioning it because you can build your own little Wi-Fi module, and you can turn your own house lights on and off because it's got an API, and there are custom transformers you can download from the FME hub to play around with that already built. You can go and download a Nest connection to use FME to turn your heating on and off if you want to, again, just because you can, or you can do a spot of art. And the reason why I was prompted to show this or to talk about this section was because a fortnight ago I received an email from one of our FME users, and I mean, I sort of was, it's a bit of fun really, but I had a bit of a laugh out loud moment because it inspired me, but it also, I couldn't work out how the heck he'd done it. So I'm going to show you, given the theme from the start of today where we had a look at some of the uses of FME, the sort of pre-COVID session where we looked at some of the activities we did. This is basically a little bit of a clap for carers from Paul Farrimond at Network Rail. So I'm going to drag a workspace in here. And some of you in the group who've joined us, who've used FME for a while, will look at this and immediately see what's going on in there. Again, as I said, not necessarily, it doesn't serve any purpose at all, but you can see there's a creator, there's a link here. You can see that there is a junction. There are also tunnels. So junctions and tunnels, these are connecting links. If you hover over one of these, you can see there are many vertices around the outside of that letter T. I genuinely thought he might have sat and clicked each link and added an extra vertex into here, because you can do that and then you can move it and line them up. How wrong was I? He did use FME to do this. I'm not going to tell you how he did it. If you'd like to know, they're a bit mean, really, but if you'd like to know, then drop us a note, put something into the chat. We'll send you a message afterwards. Send us an email to fme@1spatial.com and I'll give you the secret. He threw me a second one shortly afterwards as well, which was the laugh out loud. So little nod in there, but it was quite nice. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because, oh, and by the way, Paul did all of this on his own time. He didn't do any of this on Network Rails time. I will put that disclaimer in there. The reason why I wanted to do this is my immediate thought afterwards was that Paul, should submit this as a certified professional accreditation submission, or at least part of it, because actually what he's done is a very, very interesting bit of logic behind the scenes to be able to do that workflow. I'll give you a clue. It's to do with raster processing, but we'll get into that in a little while. So if you want to be a certified pro, this is a accreditation that's open to absolutely everybody. You need a couple of years of FME experience or something equivalent to that. You need to complete an exam. You need to attend some training with a certified trainer, and you can throw a message into the chat to Dale to ask about that. And you need to submit a couple of projects. Now, obviously, this, what you do as a personal challenge might be a part of a submission, and we'd encourage you to get in touch with SAFE and ask them if what you are interested in pursuing is going to be relevant to as a contribution. But by all means, get in touch with them, and you could have some accreditation letters after your name from a certified professional perspective. So the peek into the future that I promised you was around innovation days. This is interesting every year because SAFE have a week where they give staff some time to do a hackathon. And they've published a blog recently on some of the things that have come out of the hackathon, and things like the Minecraft support in FME and a couple of other things that have recently turned up in FME are as a result of this work and of this hackathon. The top one that I'm interested in is this calendar view for FME server schedules, to be able to see where your schedules are positioned to make the most of your capacity. So that's been done as a hack. The reason why I'm showing you this is you can go and vote on the idea for that and vote it up and add a comment about why you want this. We've just been talking about Slack. There's a Slack app option. We deploy FME server quite a lot. Doing secure integrations is a bit more challenging. It'd be nice to have that more easy. There are this one I'm really interested in, visual differencing workspaces. So having two workspaces and trying to spot the difference. The one I'm super excited about actually is the performance profiler. So there's been work on coming up with a way of being able to identify in a workspace where performance is degraded, or you can make some improvements. You can sort of do that now, but you do need to know some techniques, much of which we cover in a lot of detail on our FME Advanced training. So anyway, I just wanted to let you see a few of those and see how you can influence it. And to end, I'm going to draw your attention to a transformation webinar that we've got later in the year. I won't dwell on it though, because I've mentioned webinars already. Just go to our events page to see what we've got coming up.